people think they need these tablets.
No wonder you've got sleeping problems.
And they've been sold this lie that they'll fix their problem.
Over 14 million prescriptions a year for sleeping tablets.
Cardiovascular risk went up by like 60%.
They're never going to cure, they're never going to go to the root cause.
Society's against us.
You see your GP and you've got 6 minutes with them. It's just easier just to give them a pill. You're doing everything wrong. Here's some more meds for you which aren't helping. Solve the bloody underlying issue.
So this is a huge problem. When you are sleeping badly, you then become fixated on it. But I didn't need a tracker to tell him I had bad sleep.
And they don't even work, do they?
But people, they go, I've got messed up sleep, but I'm going to bed at 3 a.m. on a weekend because I'm out on the lash. If you don't regulate those two things, you are not going to sleep well. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Healthy Podcast. Today we are going to continue the theme of sleep and we're going to talk about what is actually stopping you from sleeping. My name is Dr. Edward Lynch. I'm a medical doctor and a lifestyle doctor and also the founder of Healthy and the Wellbeing Doctors. Today I'm happy to bring on two of our incredible guests again, Dr. Nick and Dr. Helen, and they're going to I think we're actually going to take a bit of a wander down rant alley today, but we'll see what happens. Nick?
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm a general medicine consultant, and we're going to talk about what's stopping you sleeping.
So hi, I'm Helen, or Dr. Gerse. I'm a consultant geriatrician with an interest in lifestyle medicine. So yes, sleep, it's a really big problem. And we see lots of patients who come in and they'll say they're struggling with their sleep, and it's about how we can help them. We know that there's over 14 million prescriptions a year for sleeping tablets. And on top of that, there's another 14 million that are tablets to try and help people sleep, but not classified as sleeping tablets. So this is a huge problem. The patients that I see, we see lots of patients will come in and say maybe they have trouble going off to sleep, or quite a lot of the time it's waking up in the middle of the night and then not going back to sleep. And it's trying to work out what is causing the issue, and they want simple tasks on how to resolve it.
Absolutely, and I think sleep problems are as unique as the individual, aren't they? There's so many different things that could go wrong, and it really does involve delving deep to find the problem. But it blows my mind what you just said, 14 million sleeping tablets. And they don't even work, do they? They're just knocking you out, but you're not getting good quality sleep.
I know, and I do think there's a lot around culture, because patients, sleeping tablets, they are the quick fix, but they're never going to cure, they're never going to go to the root cause of the problem. There's lots of evidence now that actually CBT, so cognitive behavioural therapy, is much better for sorting out people's sleep for the long term, as opposed to that quick fix of give me a sleeping tablet.
Yeah, I just think this entire thing, when I was a foundation doctor, are you talking about patients on a ward there? When you Either, okay. But when we look at it medically, it increases risk of falls massively. You become drowsy, but it doesn't increase sleep quality. Mm-hmm. So the nurses are saying, can you please just give us a sleeping pill, because it's taking a load off. If someone's causing a bit of a racket at night, potentially waking up other patients and so on. I get why they would want to have a sleeping pill, because it's like an easy fix. But for the patients, it's not actually helping them whatsoever, and it's increasing other risks that we really don't want.
Yeah.
And then you look at things like 28% of the NHS's carbon footprint comes from pharma. It's like, and then we just keep dishing out meds. Here's some more meds for you, which aren't helping. Yeah. The whole thing baffles me.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's not just on a ward environment. People think they need these tablets. The demand of people going to their GP asking for sleeping tablets is huge. And they've been sold this lie that they'll fix their problem. And, it's not just sleeping tablets. You talked about other things, but alcohol as well. We think, a quick nightcap, Dad'll sort it out and get me to sleep. But it's all wrong, isn't it? It's all totally false.
Yeah, and alcohol just... I often talk about the perils of alcohol, and my mum hates me for it because I say, alcohol's worse for you than heroin. She's like, what? But no, genuinely,
I think if they found it now, if alcohol was invented now, it would be...
completely banned. I think the thing is, it's too easy to make, isn't it? So, you leave something for a while and it just ferments and you get a bit of alcohol. But... what alcohol does to your sleep as well, it blocks your rapid eye movement sleep, which on our previous episode we talked about the benefits of rapid eye movement sleep and why we need it for emotional processing. But for somebody who's even drinking once or twice a week and they're getting poor sleep, you know, we need to be looking at the things that is what is stopping you from sleeping. If you're drinking alcohol, you're going to miss out on a huge benefit of your REM sleep. So we've got to be at least controlling that to a degree.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think the reason I love doing these podcasts is trying to empower people to work out what is the reason why they can't sleep. There's going to be lots of issues out there, and hopefully we'll go through a few so they can work out, is that me? And then they can help rectify, because I don't think the answer is, as we've eloquently said, sleeping tablets. I think it is trying to find out the reason.
But then I think as well, there's dependency as well, isn't there, around these pills. When patients take them, it's very often that they stay on them for a huge amount of time. Even things like people are popping codeine at night to help them sleep, and they're doing it regularly all of the time. Codeine's one of the milder opiates, but if you're doing that chronically, it's really not good for you. And I think we need to try and, there's underpinning lifestyle issues that's causing their sleep issues, and we're just adding in a pharmacological intervention, a pill, to try and cover up these like issues that they've got going on, solve the bloody underlying issue, and then if we actually solve that, they won't be sleeping badly. And it's just like we just don't have the, sorry Nick, we just don't have the time. I think you see a GP and you've got 6 minutes with them. You know, the 4 minutes that's just documentation, so you go, you know, it's just easier just to give them a pill. And you see that with antidepressants, you see it with lots of other meds. It's like, what are we actually doing?
Absolutely. And there's whole books on it. You could even, you know, we've got 25 minutes for this podcast. We're not going to be able to scratch the surface of the different complexities and problems that can cause sleep issues. And you're right, you need time to really delve into it and get into it.
So when we were talking before, we, you know, thinking about the risk factors for people, and off the top of our head we quickly came up with at least 8. So we had caffeine, light, stress, the disassociation or negative associations with bed. Bed should be where we sleep and nothing else. It shouldn't be where you do your work or where you eat.
And ideally the same bed.
Bed.
If you're jumping from hotel room to hotel room, that massively impacts it as well.
Yeah, it's like Pavlov's dog, isn't it? When they ring the bell, they start to salivate because they're expecting food. Same thing when you get into your bed. If you know that's the place where you sleep, you're going to trigger that sleep process straight away.
Much more likely. Yeah. And the other things we mentioned were stress, medication, getting up in the night to go to the toilet, which is a really common factor. I think we see lots of patients with that. And that was all I could think.
Social jet lag.
Social jet lag, yes.
Talk us through that.
So I think this is probably what we see lots of younger people with. So they're going out partying on the weekend, having much less sleep because they're having a good time, because ultimately life is for fun. And then when they try and get back into the work on Monday, the 9 to 5, they really struggle with their sleep habit. So it takes them up until about Thursday to catch up again, and then it's party again on Friday.
And it's not just that, it's also the work jet lag, isn't it? That you've got like a big project due, or an essay to write, or whatever it is. So you're staying up late at night to get that done, and then you're not getting enough sleep. And it becomes a spiral. You might then have a nap in the afternoon, and that's dropped your adenosine levels. So when you do need to get to bed, you've not got enough adenosine to actually drive your need to sleep. And it becomes, like I said, a bit of a vicious cycle. And then on the weekends, you catch up, so you completely mess your routine. So then when you go back to the weekdays, you can't get back into your usual routine.
Yeah, that's great. Building on that, there's QQRT, which is a way that we look at the overall sleep quality, which is quality, quantity, regularity, and timing. And just touching on a few of those things, we've talked about alcohol, we've touched on caffeine, we've talked about the social jet lag, going to bed at different times. All of those things massively impact your sleep quality. But dolphins, as an example, it's incredible what they can do with their brain. They can sleep on one side of their brain. They can wash that side of their brain, clear out all of the rubbish, which is what happens when you sleep, whilst the other side stays slightly more alert. So they have what's called unihemispheric sleep. So one side of their brain can sleep at the same time. Whereas with humans, both sides of our brain are asleep. But what's interesting is when we go to a different bed space, so hotels, if you're traveling, you're hopping from hostel to hostel or whatever, you don't actually fully go into a deep sleep with both sides of your brain. One side stays slightly more alert. Now, it's not uni-hemispheric like dolphins can do, because, you know, they're obviously underwater and having to, like, survive underwater. Thankfully, we can actually just lie in bed. But that's why we don't sleep particularly well when we change our bed space all of the time, and that impacts our sleep quality. So let's go back to the QQRT. We want to make sure that we're doing things that ensure good sleep quality. So avoiding things like alcohol, because we know that knocks off your REM sleep. We want to try and avoid things like caffeine, because it's what we call a competitive agonist for adenosine. So competitive agonist means it's filling the holes that the adenosine would fill, and adenosine is the thing that provides that sleep pressure, the thing that's forcing you asleep. Caffeine fills those holes temporarily. Its half-life's about 5 hours until it dissociates and is broken down. But those are things that massively impact sleep quality. Your sleep quantity, we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough time, like the window of our sleep is big enough. So ideally it is around 8 hours, because then we're doing those 4 to 5 sleep cycles where we're getting that really, really beneficial REM sleep later on for that emotional processing. Then we look at things like regularity. So it's what you talked about, the social jet lag. Are we going to bed at the same time every day? And are we waking up at roughly the same time every day? Within an hour. But, you know, as long as it's within those parameters, we do a lot better. But people, they go, I've got messed up sleep, but I'm going to bed at 3 a.m. on a weekend because I'm out on the lash, drinking ale, having caffeine the next day. It's like you're doing everything wrong.
Having a long lie-in, programming your brain to sleep at the wrong times.
Yeah, we're doing absolutely everything wrong. It's like, no wonder you've got sleeping problems. Oh yeah, let's throw a pill on top of that. And then finally is the timing. So making sure that we are sleeping during the night hours, if we can, when it's dark. Yeah. This is why I feel bad for like shift workers and people traveling a lot, because it's hard you basically get no quality, poor quantity, bad regularity and bad timing when you're doing those things. But if you look at those 4 factors, that's really how you can assess your sleep and work out what potentially is going wrong.
Yeah. Have you heard of something called orthosomnia, where people are so obsessed with their sleep trackers that it's actually stressing them to the point where they don't sleep, which is crazy. Bonkers, isn't it?
I think I had that. So my husband bought me a sleep tracker when 3 children, youngest one was probably 1, let's say, and he very kindly bought me a Whoop, because for the love of his heart,
I'll take it off you.
I've got one. Genuinely, you can have it, because I hated it because I wore it, but I didn't need a tracker to tell him I had bad sleep. And I think actually it's from then, to be honest, it's when you are sleeping badly, you then become fixated on it. And I think it's reassuring people that there's simple things that they can do that will help their sleep, because you become quite rigid. You think, oh, I'm not sleeping well, I'm going to go to bed early. But then if you go to bed early, you get the disassociation with your bed, because you're in bed and you can't sleep. So actually, it is about, like Nick always says, being an experiment of your own body. We are all going to sleep slightly differently. Yes, we probably need around 8 hours, but actually it's having that confidence of working out what is right for you.
Yeah, I also find, though, you know, the sleep trackers, I've got a Garmin, sacked off the Whoop. I found it after the first couple of weeks, it doesn't really add anything.
We're really not sponsored by Whoop.
We're really not sponsored. But it's also £27 a month.
Yes.
It's outrageous, and it doesn't really give you... anyway.
I'll still take their money.
I just think... I found it unhelpful, completely unhelpful, because it was saying... I'd train hard during the day and then go to bed, and it's like, you need to have, like... 53 hours of recovery or something, and I was like, are you joking? Like, I'll just spend the rest of my life in bed. Or there'll be days where it's saying you've underslept, and I'll wake up feeling refreshed. I genuinely think I'm ready to go here, and then I look at this thing, it's like, you should be knackered. But have a slow day.
But lots of people say about just that whole experiment, how do you feel just as good as how do you feel in the morning. You don't need the tracker to tell you that. Do you wake up and do you feel refreshed? Great, that's fine.
I'm with you, and I've found a few ways you can measure whether you've slept well, because, you know, as you said, my whole philosophy of being a scientist of yourself, measuring how you're doing and then making the changes and seeing if they're making an impact. And I think I've looked into it. Some sleep trackers are fairly accurate, so I'm not completely ruling them out. If that works for you, that's fine. But I'd only use it if you've got a problem with sleep to measure how you're doing and then measure the improvement. I don't think you should be using it if you're sleeping fine.
Yeah.
But then if you want to know how well you're sleeping, you could Google the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. It's a bit of a questionnaire, but you can fill that in. That'll give you an indicator of your sleep quality. Or Matthew Walker, we talked about his amazing book. He has like 4 questions to answer, which is, after you wake up in the morning, do you want to go back to sleep after a few hours and do you feel like you could just sleep? Do you need caffeine before noon to be able to keep yourself going? If you don't set an alarm clock, would you just sleep straight past the time when you want to wake up? And if you're driving, I thought this one was a bit weird, but he's the expert. If you're driving, can you remember the colour of the last 3 traffic lights you went through?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And he's saying, if your answer is no to any of them, or I think yes for the one about if you can go back to sleep and if you need caffeine, you've got a problem.
I'm not
and
into
you need
that
to work
one.
on it.
I'm not into that last
I
one.
struggle with that one as well.
Yeah.
But even better, and credit Michael Mosley, we've talked a little bit about him, legend, sadly passed away. He mentioned another one, the sleep onset latency test, and it was developed by our I'd say friend of the show, Nathaniel Kleitman, who's the guy who went down the cave with the buckets of water, the guy who helped develop EEGs. So the sleep onset latency test is clearly a lateral thinker, this guy. You put a metal tray by your bed and you hold a spoon. You dim the lights and you get into bed.
With the spoon?
With the spoon in your hand over the tray. The idea is when you fall asleep, you'll drop the spoon, it'll hit the tray, and the clang will wake you up. But just before you do this, set a timer. So if you fell asleep within 5 minutes, you got a big sleep problem. 5 to 10 minutes, you got troublesome sleep. 10 to 15 minutes, a mild sleep problem. And if you manage to wait more than 15 minutes before falling asleep, you're probably doing okay.
Right, I read this. I hadn't a Scooby-Doo what he was on about, but I actually get that now. So I wasn't sure if you were like to put water in the spoon or something. I had no idea what he was on about, but it's actually the clang.
It's the clang that wakes you up,
Okay.
And apparently, I can't remember if it was Edison or one of the great inventors did the same thing, but his idea was you have great inventions, great ideas when you're in REM sleep, but you forget them. So he did it to try and wake himself up in REM sleep. So he'd wake up and go, oh, I had that amazing dream, and write it down. Right. So that's interesting as well. But in terms of measuring sleep, the spoon test, I think, is the one I'd go for.
Yeah, but I suppose it's probably out of those 2 tests, so the 4 questions, so mentally I was just answering them and I'd say no. So from those, I wouldn't have a sleep problem.
Yeah, so don't get a sleep
problem. But
then,
from the spoon, I probably fall asleep within 10-15 minutes. So therefore they're saying I have a mild one. But I think it always goes back to are you worried, isn't it? Am I worried that I'm not having the right amount of sleep? Am I worried that there's a problem? And actually I'm not, so therefore I don't need to feel like I need to do the tracking, but it'll be different for everyone.
Yeah. I think the other thing about what is it that's stopping me from sleeping is a little bit about the culture. We alluded to this on the last episode, which is about your chronotype. Are you a morning lark, or are you more of an evening person? And the way the culture's set up is that we all should be working in the morning. You're in the office for 9 o'clock, which isn't that helpful if you're a night owl.
Yeah.
But then also, the other thing that's stopping you from sleeping is we've got this, rather than biphasic sleeping pattern, we've got this monophasic sleeping pattern where you sleep at night and then you're awake for all of the day. But biologically, some people have this biphasic sleeping pattern. So it was interesting in Greece. I think there was a study done that looked at, it was when their economy was doing really badly, and they were like, how do we increase productivity? And they thought, I know, let's get rid of siestas. So they said,
oh, I've read this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think the shops were open from like 9 till 1, and then they were closed from 1 till 5, and then they were open again 5 till 9 p.m. And then economists came in like, what on earth are you doing? Get them in work from 9 to 5 and then let them go to bed. So they completely got rid of the siestas. It was 26,000 Greeks, I think, that they removed the siestas of the. And when they tracked the outcomes of it, what they found was that, especially in working men, cardiovascular risk went up by like 60%. It went up astronomically. generally across the population it went up about 32%, I think it was. That might not quite be right, but it's around there. It's low 30s, but especially in working men, cardiovascular risk went up dramatically, and they saw a huge increase in the prevalence of problems in that population. So the other thing is, it's hard, isn't it, because we're ingrained in this culture of you sleep at night and you work during the day, but when you look at high performers, Usain Bolt is napping in the afternoon. When we're looking at like people setting world records, they're napping just before doing that thing.
Yeah.
I think there's a few politicians who also had naps. I think Churchill had naps. I'm not particularly fond, but Maggie Thatcher had naps. Like there was these people in history, when we look at them, they're having naps in order to improve performance. So we also get that physiological dip, don't we? The postprandial alertness dip.
Yeah, early
afternoon, post, just after prandial meal, whether or not you've eaten or not, but we get a slight drop, a physiological drop in alertness, early to mid-afternoon. So that is, if you're going to nap, that's the time to do it, and that's why people do siestas. But I think the other thing stopping you from sleeping is that kind of cultural box that we all get forced into.
Absolutely, and so interesting what you said about the taking away people's naps and the worse outcomes for people. Reminds me of, is it when the clocks go forward you get less sleep? That's right, isn't it? Yeah. I always struggle with this one. When the clocks go forward.
Spring forward in spring back in winter.
So spring, it's not far off from now. When the clocks go forward, there'll be more heart attacks, more strokes turning up in our A&Es, because that loss of an hour's sleep has a big detrimental impact on people's health. There's more car crashes. Which tells me that we're clearly not getting enough sleep if it takes only taking away an hour from people to cause all of that harm. And then when it comes round to when you get the extra hour sleep, there's less heart disease, everything. Everyone's clearly needs that extra hour, and then it reduces the amount of heart attacks and everything. It's crazy, but it shows how on the verge we are, that it only takes that little bit of change to cause all that harm.
I think, again, if you could say to somebody, we're going to give you this thing that's going to make you more attractive, it's going to improve your mental health, it's going to make you more physically robust, your performance will go up, it'll reduce your risk of cancer, it means you're much less likely to have a heart attack.
Improve your immune system. I presume you're going for
everything, almost everything about your body.
What is this one, the drug you're talking about?
Exactly.
There's not a single function in the human body that sleep isn't beneficial for. We are set up as a society to completely ruin it and smash people full of meds. It does baffle me. But I think if we can take it back to just some core principles, what are just some very basic things that I can do listening to actually sort this out?
Can I start? Because I think one of the classic things I see in clinic is people who are drinking too much caffeine and not realising the impact it has on them. So I'd say no caffeine after 1 o'clock at the latest, but even then you need to know your own body type. Some people, for them, the half-life of caffeine on average I think is 6 hours, which means in 6 hours you've got rid of half the caffeine you've had. So even at 1 o'clock you've got half it left at 7 o'clock. You've got and you'll have a quarter of it left at 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's a lot of caffeine still floating around your body. So I'd say no caffeine in the afternoons. If you think you might be a slow excreter, someone who's slow at getting rid of caffeine, you need to stop even earlier. I personally really should only have 1 or 2 decaf coffees and before 11 o'clock. If I go beyond that, I'm not sleeping very well. Yeah.
For me, I think it's the bed association. Bed has to be for sleep. Because if we look back to when there was the COVID pandemic, everyone had to work at home. And I think, you do Teams calls, people would be in their bedrooms working, like maybe having their, I don't know whether people have their lunch or anything in the bed, but
like
bed.
Mixed function rooms.
Mixed function, exactly. Bedroom should be, a bed should be for sleeping.
Yeah. For me, it comes down to sorting out when you go to bed and when you wake up. If you don't regulate those two things, you are not going to sleep well. Because, again, in the last episode, we talked about the circadian rhythm and also the sleep pressure of adenosine. Those things are happening in the background, but you can really help your body if you regulate that by when you go to bed and when you wake up. So that's the first thing I would sort out. Have a fixed bedtime and have a fixed wake up time, and make sure in the morning you get plenty of bright light in the back of your eyes, and that will wake you up. And then obviously avoid the ale, caffeine, pills, all the rest of it, moving beds all of the time.
Smoking.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, it's a good lifestyle. Just live a good, healthy lifestyle and you'll get better sleep. Can I add one more, which is to try and figure out your chronotype. And like you say, society's against us, but try to build your life as much as you can in line with your chronotype to fit. So when I say chronotype, I mean, are you an early morning person or are you a late riser person? And actually, this is a no-brainer. Give yourself 8 hours in bed. How many of us actually cut away and we only spend 6 hours in bed, and then you're going, I don't get very good sleep. How are you going to get good sleep if you're only in your bed for 6 hours? Yeah. So make sure you build a plan to have an actual 8 hours in bed.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming on again. Yeah. Look forward to doing the next one with you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking on some advice, and I hope you found the information useful, and I hope that you can make some dramatic improvements into your own health and well-being. If you are interested, then you can take up some of the healthy blood testing, which will help look at any nutritional deficiencies. If you're having any problems with like fatigue, or you're struggling with getting your exercise right, you can speak to our lovely physicians over here who will help. Lifestyle is incredibly complicated. You know, we have to look at things like your past medical history, the medications that you're on, the exercise routine that you're doing, the foods that you're eating, including what your sleep's like, your chaotic lives. It is very, very, very difficult to work out how to actually optimize your health and well-being. So if you do want to, we can help you navigate that. You can just follow the links below and book in a consultation and even do your blood test. It's entirely up to you. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please drop us a like and a subscribe, and we shall see you on the next one.